I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Professor Mag.
And today we are doing a sort of mini review of Aeon's End Beyond the Breach. I say mini review because we just recently reviewed Aeon's End Legacy. You can also check out a full gameplay of Aeon's End Beyond the Breach as well. Also, you can check out the crowdfunding campaign that should still be going on when you, well, depending on when you watch this review, may still be going on when you watch this review. But that said, because of all that, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on what's going on here. I'll give you a very brief overview of what Aeon's End is, what Beyond the Breach is adding to it, and then we'll just dive into some of our thoughts, as well as the different experiences we've had with the Aeon's End franchise so far. To that end, Aeon's End is a cooperative deck building game. A cooperative deck building game which you're going to be facing off against a nemesis. You're going to have your various breach mages over here. You're going to be unlocking various breaches in order to cast spells into those breaches with your starting deck of 10 cards that you'll then be building out using the fixed card market. This market over here, you can build out the market utilizing a variety of cards. Cards that will unlock. You'll start off the game with a bunch of cards, and other cards will unlock as you play. That's where we go into the unique aspects of Beyond the Breach. Every Aeon's End is a little bit different as far as how they handle things, but Beyond the Breach definitely does have a semi-campaign mode, meaning you have the ability to go through a story. It's not legacy, you're not destroying things, putting stickers on, but you will be going through
narrative elements,
as well as you go through those narrative elements, they'll be like, and now you unlock card pack A or card pack B or whatever it is. So you do have progression just without the full-on legacy mode if you've played either of the Aeon's End legacy campaigns. Outside of that, they definitely bring back friends and foes over here, which is my first time playing with these. We'll talk about that stuff soon, but these are basically either difficulty modifiers or just variants to your gameplay where you have friends and foes. Friends will help you, foes will hurt you, as the names would imply, and those go into the turn order deck and will be popping off doing their various things, but it gives you a way to further mix up the experience. So you have different mages, you have different nemesis, you have different friends, different foes, you have different full card decks going on, so you have a ton of variety to this cooperative deck building experience.
And something fun about this, I believe with all of the Aeon's End content, but perhaps with the legacies don't hold me there, but it's all integratable. So if you already love this game, or if you start getting into it because of this expansion, you can start getting into all more, and it all works very well together as well.
And I do believe the legacy stuff does have integratable stuff.
Yeah, like I'm not sure how you'd,
We have your finalized, customized mages at the end of it, plus various card packs, things like that. Although, speaking of legacy, as far as our personal experiences with Aeon's End, and again, this is why it's going to be a shorter review, because we've kind of covered our thoughts. We're just going into some of the differences that Beyond the Breach adds. I've played through the original Aeon's End, and I've played through Legacy, and I've played through this. I may have played an additional expansion somewhere. I don't recall. And I think you've played just Legacy and this.
Yes.
To that end, if you want to check out our review on Aeon's End Legacy, you can go ahead and do so. But as far as the differences this provides, I guess let's start off with what the differences are. So the core differences you're going to see here from Legacy, if you watch that one, is going to be obviously that you're not going through a Legacy. You're not progressing your characters, you're not putting on stickers on things. Rather, you do have a story mode to go through, and then you do have unlockable sort of content, although if you want, you could skip the story mode and just throw those cards wherever you want, and just start playing a regular smorgasbord of setting up and going at it if you want. Additionally, you have the friends and foes that are going to be, I believe these were in a previous Aeon's End, if I'm not mistaken. I never played with them before, but you have these focused very heavily and Beyond the Breach. And then you also, of course, have new mages, new nemesis, and new card pools. So it's a lot of variety, some focus on stuff that wasn't heavily focused on before, and that's pretty much, outside of that, it's going to be a little bit more of the same. To that end, what are your general thoughts on this? What are your general thoughts on Aeon's End? Let's start there.
Yeah, so I think there's a few things that make this game very, very unique. And one of them is going to be that you don't shuffle your discard pile. So as you're discarding things, even when you're discarding your cards that you played for that round, you kind of choose where you want them to go in the order, and you know exactly what's coming and when it's coming. So you can really plan for that, which I really like when you're playing tactically with something like this, especially being a co-op deck building game. You're focusing on the co-op aspect, that you can have even more levels of strategy without having to, hold on to that against your opponent in your memory. And then the other part I love is the turn order deck. So this is something where this is currently set up for a 2-player game. So you can see that each player gets 2 turns. The friend and the foe get a turn, and the nemesis gets 2 turns. So sorry, guys. But depending on the number of players, this will change a little bit, but this is always shuffled, and then you'll see who will come out and what turns will happen. So I just really, really love this system that It's random. I kind of like it when things are random but not too random. Almost like the modifier cards in Gloomhaven where you know everything that's coming, but the cards that are coming are a little bit randomized. So I do love that you can kind of tell what to expect, and when you hit a certain point, you know what to expect. But until then, it's a little bit randomized.
Yeah, and as for me personally, the shuffling the deck thing, I'm always fine with it, but I've never been that thrown by it. To a certain extent, you mentioned how you like random, and one of the things I've always found is sometimes when I'm shuffling a deck, there's that randomness of you might get any card at any point. And this has more control, which can be strategic at times, but I'll never get that card I just bought as my first card in the next cycle. But what I do really like is, like you said already, the turn order deck. I do really enjoy that. I find that is something that there's a degree of controlled chaos. You know there's going to be a certain number of turn structure, so that it's kind of level, but also those times where you're like, I got 2 turns in before the nemesis, so alternatively, they got their turns before us. That definitely adds a nice degree of tension to the experience. Outside of that, I'm a huge fan of fixed market decks, and Aeon's End is very much a fixed market deck builder with a ton of card variety going on to the experience. There's tons of variety to the way the nemesis work in this game, and we've only really shown you one over here, but there are a bunch of new nemesis, and if you've played Aeon's End, you know how drastically different every nemesis can feel with the different things that they're going to add to the table. I definitely felt that the Terror and Brass is very unique as far as, like, again, if you watch the gameplay, you'll see how he has like this moments of you can't touch him and then moments of being completely vulnerable. I really like that arc and tempo and flow that it provides. But overall, it's a solid degree of variety to the experience that I really enjoy. I believe my rating of Aeon's End was a 3.5 out of 5, and you really like the Legacy game. You came in at
I really did. I believe it's a 5.
5.
I believe it's a 5.
Which I guess brings us to this particular version. So Aeon's End regular. For me, I don't think the experience shifts dramatically between regular Aeon's End and Aeon's End base game and Aeon's End Beyond the Breach. I think the main thing I like about Beyond the Breach so far has been the complexity of nemesises, which specifically... Nemesi, I think. The complexity, I would say, without being rules... changing up the gameplay feel without being 17 pages of rule text. I do find sometimes, and I do think this can happen in Aeon's End, I just haven't found that so far with Beyond the Breach, sometimes when you have more variety, at a certain point you have to have more text and more rules and more things, because only so many simple versions you can have before it starts having to get more complicated in order to be different. And so far, I really like the nemesi that we've encountered in Beyond the Breach, so that part's definitely a plus for me. I also like the friends and foes, both in terms of how they could be a difficulty modification, but also in terms of just the variety they provide as well. They give something else to kind of focus on, which can slow down the game a bit. It's not something I'd recommend you're trying to manage if you're first diving into Aeon's End the first time, but once you do know how to play, it's pretty easy to get it into the game and have them popping off. And again, it gives you a further degree of variety. Once you have that variety of friends and foes, you can pick which ones you like or just go random, but it means that between the fixed market, your mages, the nemesi, and everything, you just have a ton of variety to experience, which I very much appreciate. As far as yourself?
Yeah, I completely agree with that aspect, that there are also certain cards in this game that chain really well off of each other, and you can start to find that synergy in this game between everything that's happening, that, as you start building your deck, you may start purchasing certain things that work really well together, and then other players could be purchasing other things that all work really well together, and somehow you're building out these characters that are able to kind of combo with the different things that they're doing, such as like gaining pulse tokens and then spending them. So I think that kind of all encompasses it now, with like the friends and the foes adding to it, that they kind of add these extra abilities where you're able to trigger off other things and just add more things throughout the game, like gaining charge tokens and things like that. And I also really appreciate that for the nemesis, even though you're paying into this armor, and this is just for this one example, but even though you're trying to work toward the different things that they're putting up against you, you're getting rewarded for them as well. So even though you are losing a little bit when you're trying to stop them, the game also has like cool ways to kind of incentivize you to be like, it's still fun and I'm getting something out of it.
Yeah. For me, overall, I think as far as just general rating, final thoughts, all that stuff, for me, I don't think this changes my opinion of Aeon's End. I enjoy Aeon's End. It's always fun. It has a nice tempo of feeling like you can't get on top of the nemesis until eventually you power up enough that you can, or depending on how the game goes, and that you get, squashed at the end. But I do feel it has a very solid ramp. I enjoy the experience. I don't think this, despite the fact that I do appreciate the friends and foes, my first time playing with those, and I like the new characters, specifically the nemesis more so. Like, the characters are nice. They give a nice little change, but I think the nemesis more so than the characters, I like how different different those are. I like everything that's going on here, but I don't think it necessarily improves the experience. It definitely doesn't make it worse. I'm still coming in at a 3.5 out of 5 on this.
And for me, I think my Aeon's End journey is still going. So for me, I am having a bit of a time trying to mentally separate myself from playing the Legacy game first and experiencing this whole world and then trying to play the regular game. So for me, it is going to sit somewhere between a 4 and a 4.5, and I think it will probably sit at a 4 because I love Legacy games so much. I think that the Legacy element for me and the personal progression of building your character and the stickers and just really building a character and making them more powerful than what you would just start off with, is what I love in most games. And I think if you make a Legacy game of anything, I'll probably give it, a bump higher than anything else if I really enjoy that progression element. So for me, I think it probably will be somewhere right around a 4, and I think it's missing the Legacy element, and then after that, which we'll go into our recommendations, but I typically prefer a game that has a ongoing market. So instead of a fixed market, I prefer a variable market. So for me, because of the Legacy version, that's what made me really, really fall in love with it. Whereas this definitely still, I would say this is probably my favorite deck builder with a fixed market.
Really?
So, yeah.
Which I guess brings me to recommendations. My favorite deck builder with a fixed market is going to be Dominion. Highly recommend checking that out. I think it's a fantastic, quick, clean deck builder and one of the ones that popularized the genre.
And really quickly, I'll just shout out Clank Legacy. Clank in general is a really fun deck building game, but if you can grab a Legacy version of even Aeon's End Legacy, I recommend both. So,
in any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Professor Mag.
And have a good one.
Bye.